or an entrepreneurial or freelancing activity, please do share in the chat 3 quick words or phrases. That would really be a good way to get to know people in the group. I'm going to guess that a lot of the attendees are Dubai-based, but we'll find out in the chat. As for myself, I'm currently based in Beirut. More on me in a minute. Before we get into the actual gist of today's session, obviously something that has brought us all together recently due to the current era that we're living in is virtual meetings, virtual presentations, and evidently, as a result, the global phenomenon that has taken the world by storm, which is called Zoom fatigue. And you can see on the screen a very familiar sight that has taken our daily professional lives by storm. Today's session has been designed to help you with practical tips on how to reduce that Zoom fatigue phenomenon, as well as the ability to better project one's professional persona onto the screen while dealing with the technology at the same time, which can be intimidating at times. So we have Tom, who's sharing with us that he's currently in Dubai and is working in a finance startup. Welcome, Tom. The practical takeaways that have been designed for you to benefit from during this 1-hour session are the following. The first one is really on the technical level. As we know, we are dealing with technological equipment, whether hardware and software, and there are specific cues and tips that we can benefit from in order for us to elevate our online presence. So we'll be talking about that during the first part of today's session. Next up, we're gonna hone in on the actual skill of public speaking, because let's face it, it's totally different experience when you speak in front of a group of people right in front of you, compared to speaking in front of a web camera and you're basically speaking to your laptop or your desktop computer. So some specifics about body language and vocals in order to really leave a mark digitally, similar to how one would leave a mark on a stage delivering a speech. And lastly, we'll be talking more about the content and the performance aspect of virtual meetings, virtual presentations, because at the end of the day, the objective remains the same, whether offline or online, and it is to leave a mark, to share a constructive message, for people to remember it and remember you as a result. So all of this we'll be talking about during this 1-hour session. A little bit about myself, I'll make it quick. My name is Rabia Al-Khudr. I'm currently based in Beirut, Lebanon. I am a soft skills and sales trainer and public speaking coach. I've recently launched a YouTube channel under the name of The Confidence Builder, where I share communication and public speaking tips for people to benefit from online and offline. I've been doing this for quite a number of years so far, ever since August 2012, the anniversary of my first public training workshop. And throughout this short amount of time that we'll be spending together, I hope to share with you as many nuggets of information and practical tips for you to start implementing immediately, literally from this evening if you wish. So I'm really excited to be with you. I hope that you share the excitement with me. And we're going to start right off with our first part, which is technical cues and technical setup tips. But before that, I would hope to get a small feedback point from you. I've told you that I am excited. Now I ask you, are you excited for today's session? Type in your answers in the chat. Are you excited for today's session? Let's see how fast you can type on your keyboards. All right, thank you, Victor, for the lovely energy. Let's go. Thank you, Muhammad, as well. I want everybody to look at the following picture. So right now, you should be seeing a picture illustrating a scene. All right. In your opinion, what is happening in this picture? What could be the story of this picture? Any guesses of where they are? Whatever comes to your mind related to this picture, write it in the chat box. Give me clues, give me insights so that we can better understand this picture. We can begin with the location question if you want. Where do you think this picture has been taken? You can also share with me what do you think is the relationship between the people in the picture. Make your best guess and write it in the chat. I've been sharing this picture for a while on numerous occasions, and you cannot imagine the variety of answers that I get. So Maha is telling us that one of them is possibly visually impaired. Okay. Asim is telling us that they are a couple. So there's an assumption that they are together talking about something exciting. All right. Ali is telling us that they're neighbors and they're chatting on their way to work. All right. All right. So notice already 3 different answers, 3 totally different viewpoints, right? So whatever we're going to talk about today, I want you to remember that very important concept, which is summed up in one word, which is perception. In the world of communication in general, and in the world of public speaking in particular, the concept of perception is critical. Here's why. No matter how much you prepare, no matter how on top of your information you are, people will only remember the actual delivery. People will only remember what they actually see on their screens. So with that in mind, I want you to remember perception when we're going to talk about everything during today's session in terms of the technical setup before the meeting, the public speaking aspect during the actual delivery, and the content and performance aspect, which would leave a mark in the mind of your audience after the fact. So always keep in mind, perception is critical in communication, and unfortunately, it makes communication a cruel activity in the sense that you have the information in your head, you might have a fumbling performance, and as a result, people will remember you poorly, and that is the reality. A reminder, because I want this session to be as interactive as possible, if you feel like asking a question at any point in time during the session, please feel free to type it in the chat, and I will make my best effort to integrate your question immediately as you post it. Also, if you feel like sharing a question via audio, please do let me know by raising your hand or using one of the Zoom functionalities to make yourself noticed in the participants list, and I will unmute you to give you the floor for you to ask the question via audio. Otherwise, we'll be keeping everybody on mute for the sake of clarity of information transmission. Okay, but remember, when you have a question at any point in time, please feel free to raise it and type it in the chat. So, in terms of technical cues and setup, let's say you have a virtual meeting coming up, like we know a lot of are taking place these days during our day-to-day professional routines. A virtual meeting, and you'd be leading on it. So you're organizing it, you're setting it up, you're going to be the main speaker or the main facilitator. And right now, you're sitting on your living room sofa. The meeting is scheduled to take place in 30 minutes, 45 minutes time. Can somebody walk me through what would the routine be to actually set that virtual meeting up? What would be the practical, tangible things that you would do in order to be ready for that meeting? You could type in the chat a checklist, so items that would be included in your preparation checklist, or you could raise your hand in order to take the floor and share with us, walk us through your preparation routine via audio. We'd love to hear from as many as you as possible. Walk me through your preparation routine for a virtual meeting that you are organizing, that you are setting up, and that you are the lead for. I'm pretty sure that over the past few weeks and even months, you must have developed a certain routine that has been working for you. So this is really the essence of this question. What is it that you're doing to properly set up a virtual meeting? Remember, the focus here is on the technical aspect. So Asim is sharing with us the idea of setting up the systems, sharing notes, knowing who would be joining. Yeah, absolutely. Testing your equipment, working on the background. Yes, absolutely. Making sure that we are in a quiet environment. Yes. Testing the platform technically, choosing reliable technology. Beautiful. So you guys have started to develop the hang of healthy practices in terms of technical setup. sitting up straight, lighting, guest list, talking points or notes, beautiful. So you notice from the things that have already been shared, a lot of the things that we take for granted or we do in the offline meeting setup world, we have just transposed them into the virtual meeting setup world as well. It's practically the same thing. There are a couple of things that we need to prioritize in the online world, however, in order to maximize the chances of success. And this is what I'm going to be sharing with you. So 3 main things I want you to remember in order to optimize the experience of your meeting guests and for people who are watching you. The first one, and it was mentioned by someone in the group, is related to lighting. All right. So lighting is very, very important because at the end of the day, what you're doing here is the video production. And when we think of movies being filmed or any video production, lighting is of critical importance. The key word or the key phrase here is indirect light, though, because some of us, if not most of us, do not have neither the luxury of time or the luxury of budget to set up a very professional lighting system, which I'm going to show you right now. What you're seeing here on the screen is what we call the standard 3-point lighting arrangement. And this is one of the most popular professional lighting setups where you guessed it, we have 1, 2, and 3 different lighting points other than the camera and yourself, the subject being filmed. In order for you to have optimal lighting, it is actually recommended to have those 3 different sources of lighting. You're going to find resources online that give you do-it-yourself approaches to lighting. And there are budget-friendly ways to actually achieve that, should this be your cup of tea. However, if we return to the actual wording that I've shared with you, there's the mention of indirect lighting. And that can sometimes be much more effective than professional lighting. Any guesses as to how we can achieve almost professional lighting through indirect lighting? What is it that I need to do in my setup to achieve good lighting indirectly? Any guesses? What do you mean when we say indirect lighting? What should I be doing in terms of my setup? So Timmy is mentioning something like near a window, and that's actually spot on. Try as much as possible to find a quiet space that is illuminated through a window, and you actually put your laptop or your webcam right in front of the window. So basically, you'd be looking out of the window, and the window would be behind the actual webcam. Except the part of the day where the sunlight would be projecting onto your window directly, the rest of the day you'd be fully illuminated from head to toe, and that would create a very soothing, calming light effect that would make your visibility very clear for your audience. Okay. Otherwise, you have the 3-point lighting setup that you've now seen in front of you that you could end up starting developing at your own. The second critically important point is the simulation of eye contact. And here it is very, very important to have your camera at eye level. So if you've noticed me right now, I've tried my best to make my own setup with the camera at the eye level, because that insinuates the feeling of eye contact the most. If you don't do that, this is what will happen. You're going to end up either having the camera beneath you, like the picture on the left, or the camera would be slightly above you, like the picture on the right. And in both cases, it might create a sense of awkwardness for both you as a speaker and for your audience watching you. So having the camera at eye level is crucially important to convey that natural sense of eye contact that happens during regular meetings where everybody would be seated at the same level at the same table. For you to do that, you can be as creative as you can while making sure that the setup is safe. So right now, personally, my setup is on a computer, is a laptop basically on a computer stand, a laptop stand, and I have a series of books and a rustic backgammon table that is supporting everything together, and that is elevating the webcam of my laptop in order for me to achieve that camera at eye level effect. All right. So that small difference makes a huge difference in terms of the experience of your viewers. And lastly, this is something that I've endeavored to do as well, especially if you are presenting content and you want to achieve the right level of energy for your audience. I would highly recommend that you present while standing, because here's the thing. When you're going to stand, you're going to recreate that same energy that is present in a public speaking format, the traditional format where you are elevated on the stage and where you have your audience in front of you. There is also that power dynamic at play. When you're standing up, you're taking energy from the ground, your posture is straight, and you're going to feel energized as you deliver your presentation material. Now, obviously, there would be more energy that you would be having to spend. And after your presentation, you will definitely feel tired. But that's a small price to pay in order for you to convey the right energy, to channel the right emotions, for you to be as convincing and as persuasive as possible. So there you have it, 3 key tips for the technical setup, one related to lighting, one related to eye contact, and one related to the actual showcasing of energy. All 3 of which are related to the second topic we're going to talk about today, which is public speaking. This is my personal coup de coeur, if you will, the professional area of training and coaching that I enjoy the most. And I'll be sharing with you some tips related to the general trade of public speaking, with some nuances related to online speaking in a virtual environment. First question is related to this gentleman here. Does anybody know who this gentleman is? I'd like you to type in your guesses in the chat box. This gentleman is related to the topic of public speaking, and he is, if you want, the modern godfather of communication. I'll be sharing with you some extra tips as the clock ticks along, as I wait also for some of your guesses. He is a university instructor. He specializes in communication skills. He has developed a seminal study on personal communication that people keep on quoting till this day. Final tip, he is American Armenian. So that should help you, hopefully, American Armenian. Victor was courageous enough to give it a shot and guessed Dale Carnegie, another very, very important figure in public speaking, definitely. This gentleman here is somebody else. I'm going to type in the answer for you in the chat in case you want to look him up. Some people have tried to guess and they tell me, is this your uncle, your father? But this gentleman is called Albert Mehrabian. If you've heard of the name or not, you definitely have heard of his study, specifically through the percentages related to his study. So these are the 3 numbers pertaining to his study: 55%, 38%, and 7%. Has anybody heard of those percentages together before? Do you have elements of knowledge related to what he was trying to study? I'm pretty sure you have. And if you haven't, that extra element that I'm going to show you next will bring the full picture. So what Albert Mehrabian was interested in his study was to try and understand how do listeners decode communication messages when people are communicating with them. And when I say listen, I mean it in the wide sense of the word. So it's not only with the ear. It turns out, as a result of his study, he came up with the following quantitative conclusion. When somebody is communicating with us, we focus mostly on their body language, the way they carry out themselves. Next is their voice. We focus on their vocal performance, their tonalities, the way they punctuate their expression through their voice. And bottom third is the actual linguistic devices of the words. We only focus 7% out of the entire communication of a person on the spoken words of an individual. So if we were to really sum up the actual essence of that study, it is this. When somebody is speaking, and that might sound counterintuitive, their impact speaking to us is mainly in the non-linguistic elements. So we are positively impressed or negatively disappointed by somebody speaking to us by their body language and their vocal performance majoritarily, a whopping 93%. Now, a lot of people find this study contentious. Not a lot of people agree with it. And when you think about it, it's kind of right. When somebody is preparing their PhD dissertation defense, and they've worked really, really hard on every single word they're going to say, words do matter. And we shouldn't come to the conclusion that words are not important when we see those results. However, if we don't back up the words with an impactful body language performance and a memorable vocal performance, those words are going to fizzle down and they're not going to carry the same weight as when we have the body language and the voice. All right, so that's really the gist of Albert Mehrabian's theory. Words are important, but we need to back them up in body language and in terms of vocals. And this is even more important in a digital world, because guess what? You're sitting alone in a room and you're trying to convey the same energy and same passion that you do usually when you have people sitting in a room. But right now you don't have them in front of you. So you need to double the effort in order to do that. I'm going to share with you right now some tips and pieces of advice on how to really maximize those 93% in a digital setting. So we're going to start first with the body language aspect. A reminder, feel free to shoot away any question you have via the chat, or you can leave them at the end. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of the session. One important aspect of a body language is related to posture and movement. Typically, when you are speaking offline on a traditional stage, having a straight posture and having minimal movement is critical to convey and showcase that sense of confidence. The same applies with online public speaking, with a couple of things that we need to focus on specifically for online. Number one, in terms of posture, like I told you, especially if you are the one presenting information, it is highly recommended to be standing up, to take that energy and showcase it to your audience. That doesn't mean that online public speaking doesn't work while being seated. It can also work. But you need to be careful about fidgeting movements while you are seated on a chair and slouching or leaning too forward while you're sitting on a chair. That could mess up the visual aspect of your performance. So best practice is to stand up whenever you can, and how long you can tolerate. Those are important aspects. Otherwise, while being seated also works. Just make sure, like somebody mentioned in the discussion earlier on the chat, to make sure that you're seated up on the chair. Avoid swiveling chairs, avoid chairs that make noise, avoid chairs that have wheels on them, etc. Then we come to the second point, which is related to movement. And here, you can leverage movement to your advantage even in an online setup, particularly when you're standing up, because you would have the leeway for movement. So you've noticed so far that I have pretty much managed to stay put at the same spot throughout this presentation. When you do that specifically at the beginning, you would maximize the sense of confidence that you're projecting to your audience. So if you want to stand still, try your best to stand still at the beginning of your speaking activity online. When you're standing still, you're conveying the sense that I'm here, this is my yard, and I am confident delivering this to you. But obviously, after a period of time, you're going to feel the need to walk off some tension in your legs, and this is very normal. So here, it is recommended to take a couple of steps, if needs be, to change your position while maintaining the centrality of your positioning vis-a-vis the camera. So I'm going to show you two different positions right now that I'm doing. This is the first one. Most of the weight, I have it on my left foot. When my left foot gets tired, I can take those couple of steps, remain central, and now my weight is actually on the right foot. Nothing has changed in terms of the frame that I'm presenting to my audience, but I have given myself some resting room for my body. Okay. Also very important to keep in mind is that your frame includes space that you can use around your head and around your body. So some of the things you can do is sometimes getting closer to the camera to create more intimacy with your audience. Just avoid getting too close. That would be creepy. And sometimes you can get further away to create more empty space, if you will, around you. And you can utilize that empty space to use your hand gestures. So pointing to one side of things and then to the other, showcasing a specific listing of things. You can play around with that. Just be careful in case you have a wired set of earphones like mine. You cannot get too far away, otherwise catastrophe would ensue. And if you're like me, you get excited with the topics you talk about, there is a risk of that happening. So make sure to know where is the leeway that the actual cord is giving. Okay? That's in terms of posture and movement. Now, when it comes to eye contact, we've talked about it. Having your camera at eye level would give the most natural sense of eye contact with your audience. At the same time, though, you can feel free to break away from the camera at times when you're thinking about something and you're still talking about it as if you're thinking about it out loud, and you're brainstorming the possibilities that you want to share with the group of people listening to you, and then you come back. And that's actually inviting for an audience. When you break your eye contact for a specific amount of time and then you come back, you're creating this sense of mysticism whereby your audience wants to know, where did you go in terms of your thoughts? And you would be inviting them, so to speak, to stay focused on your performance until you bring your eye contact back with them. Okay, so that's in general. Specifically though, and when it comes to Zoom, you know, you have the option of having a floating window whereby you can see all participants' webcams. You can also have the option of having one window where you only see the speaker. In the case of this event right now, everybody is muted and I'm the only one speaking, so the camera will always stay on me. This would give me a great vantage point to see how you guys are seeing me, how you guys are perceiving me. So when I choose the option of the video window only showcasing the speaker, in this case myself, there's a small thing you can do to really improve your eye contact performance. And this is something that goes along the following lines. Right now, I'm looking at the window that is showcasing me, all right? I want you to observe how my eye contact is changing in relationship with you. So right now, I'm no longer looking at you, and you can actually tell that I'm no longer looking at you, and I'm looking at something on my screen. And right now, I am still looking at myself, but it is closer to conveying eye contact with you. So here's the actual tip. When you're gonna have a window showcasing how you are being perceived by your audience, so basically you're seeing the camera, how it's filming you, position the window the closest to the actual webcam. When you do that, you can basically look at yourself and make sure that you are seeing your slide and seeing that your frame is fine for your audience, and you would still be conveying the semblance of direct eye contact with your audience. Okay, so give it a shot in case you try it and you have a difference, or if you've tried it before, please type in the chat your actual testimony. So that's in terms of the eye contact. I mentioned hand gestures briefly in terms of when you have extra space for you to use it. There's also one thing that I want you to be careful of when it comes to hand gestures. I'm going to type it in the chat. There's something, a phenomenon basically, related to hand gestures that is called negative patterns. Negative patterns. Let's break down that expression for a second. So a pattern is something that happens over and over again. When the pattern is negative, it means that the audience is no longer focusing on your actual performance. They're no longer focusing on the gist of your content, and they're focusing on your gestures. Here's the thing. When you do a gesture 3 times in a row within a short time span, this becomes a negative pattern, and the brains of your audience would be wired to keep on monitoring it. And your audience is going to start counting how many times you are repeating that negative pattern. A very common example is mostly in the offline world, but sometimes you can find it online. Some people, when they're really excited and if they're standing up, they might be clapping their hands without really realizing. And as they keep on clapping, you would no longer focus on what they're saying, and you're actually counting how many times they clap. There are numerous examples of negative patterns. It could be fixing one's button or shirt. It could be fixing the hair behind the ear. If you have a pen, it could be somebody playing around with a pen in their hands. All of these are examples of ways we try to evacuate the stress from our bodies. But as a result, we have a collateral damage, which is people no longer focusing on our actual content, which defeats the purpose of the entire exercise. All right? I hate to break it to you, but every single one of us has a negative pattern when they're stressed. So the idea is to film yourself and watch a recording of one of your previous Zoom meetings and be like a detective. Try to notice if there are any incongruences related to your hand gesture game. So that was mainly in terms of the actual body language side of things, the most important percentage as per Albert Mehrabian's theory. We're going to move next to vocals, equally important, both of which, the body language and the vocals, constitute the majority of the impression you're creating in the minds of your audience. 2 important concepts we're going to begin with. One is projection, the other is pitch, also known as tone of voice. We're going to begin with projection. Here, this is really in an online setup, exclusively related to your technological setup. If you invest in a better microphone, a more high quality microphone, you're going to achieve better projection. And the high-end microphones that audio professionals and radio hosts use are fantastic in terms of the quality of the audio that they produce. You're going to have a very silky, a very suave voice. You won't even recognize that this is you that you're speaking. But of course, we don't have to go to that much length. A humble earphone cable can produce good quality sound as much as you test it. Make sure that you test the positioning of the microphone. Make sure that you compare it, the built-in speaker of the computer versus the earphone, which one is better. Make sure that there isn't a lot of echo in the room. That also plays a role in terms of the quality of your vocal projection. The other aspect related to pitch, it's really illustrated in the image that you're seeing in front of you. This is an image of an EKG, so somebody measuring the heartbeats of a patient, and then at one point the patient has unfortunately passed away. So there is that very eerie sound, that very eerie monotonous sound that we hear. Some people, sadly, speak in similar fashion. They speak in a very monotonous way, and after a while, what will happen? You're going to either fall asleep, zone away, or even leave the meeting. So it's very important to have a dynamic vocal performance, and that dynamism is by creating those ups and downs that you see in the first part of the picture, and this is with you changing your tone of voice, changing your pitch. You might be asking yourselves, okay, theoretically this is fine, but how do I do this practically? Very simple. Put meaning behind the words that you're saying. I'm going to give you a very basic example. Let's say we were beginning today's session, and I was telling you that I was excited, right? So imagine me telling you this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. I'm very excited to be with you today. This will be a fantastic opportunity for learning, and we're going to have lots of fun. I love having fun right now. I am very ecstatic to be with you, and hopefully you are sharing the same level of excitement that I am putting on display right now. You're not going to buy it. There is that enormous gap between the actual words and the actual delivery of the words. So when you're going to say the word excited, show me excitement. If you don't have a colorful, exuberant public speaking style, and you're more on the sober end of things, that's also fine. But still, you can tell me, I'm really excited to be with you. There's going to be that stress on the word excited that conveys that this is the focal point of your idea, and that you are really providing an effort to channel an excited energy for your audience. Okay? So put meaning behind your words. That's the surefire way to really play around with your pitch and make sure that you don't fall into the trap of monotony. There's also a very important aspect related to rate, how fast you speak, and pacing yourself accordingly. Some people speak faster than others, visual people in the room. So people who think with images typically speak faster than others. If you know who you are and if you're a visual person, please do let us know. And do confirm to me whether or not this is what happens to you. And the reason for that is that ideas come into the mind of visual people one after the other in the format of images. And as a result, the image does not stay for long. We want to make sure we talk about it before we talk about the next image. We end up speaking a large volume of words in a minute, and we have to speak them really, really fast. Other people that are more of a kinesthetic disposition, in terms of their five senses, the aspect of touching is very important, and they like to think about their emotions, about their ideas, and just share a very few minute number of words before expressing their thoughts. Those are the opposite end of the spectrum, so the least amount of words per minute. Both are really extremes. We need to find a middle ground whereby we are pacing ourselves. We are not saying everything in one go, and we are changing things up in terms of pace. So sometimes we speak a little bit quicker, sometimes we speak a little bit slower in order for our audience to remain engaged. And one of the best ways, one of the best tools to achieve an engaging pace is through the tool of pausing. When you strategically pause throughout your public speaking, you can create so many positive realities for your audience. Number one, you give them time to think about what you just said. Number two, you give yourself, the speaker, room to breathe, room to think about what you want to say next. Number three, when a pause is strategically placed, you're basically creating also sometimes a cliffhanger moment, suspense. People want to know what you're going to say next. Although, and that's important, the pause needs to be strategically placed. So you need to think about when to pause. Some people pause at the wrong time. Some people pause for an extended amount of time. It's too long. I'll give you a quick example. Again, imagine I'm starting the session and I'm here, very excited, and I tell you, hello everyone, my name is Rabia. Here, the pause is too long and it is not positioned at the right location. So it's something to practice. Do not feel intimidated by pausing. Some people do not like to pause because they fear that somebody will interrupt them, somebody will steer their spotlight, people might assume that they forgot. It all depends on how you deliver the pause. If you're pausing and you stay silent and you keep looking into the camera, people will know this is a strategically positioned pause. Okay? One very cool way to release stress and to ensure that your voice properly represents you is to do vocal warm-ups. There are tons of vocal warm-up activities. Some are inspired by the world of theater, others by the world of music. And they can be fun at times, where you actually let off steam and you warm up your vocal cords, you warm up your lips, you warm up your tongue, you warm up the muscles of your face. All of these are very important components in vocal production. I'm going to share with you the name of a specialist in the world of listening and voice. He has lots of popular TED Talks. If you want to learn more about the topic, you might have seen some of his videos already. His name is Julian Treasure. He's a British gentleman, passionate about the world of listening and voice. He has a very couple of interesting talks. And in one of them, he includes vocal warm-up examples for you to start doing and hopefully enjoying. One aspect, though, related to the vocal aspect of your delivery is the way you sound. So we did mention tone or a tone of voice or pitch. This is one aspect of the way you sound. Here we're talking more about how people feel about you as a result of your vocal performance. Some people, when they speak, they sound passive, meaning you feel that they don't care. Some people, when they speak, they are aggressive. You feel like they're a bit too much to handle. A third type is the worst of both worlds. They are passive aggressive. You feel that there is a sense of cynicism, double standards. You can't really read them. I'm pretty sure you know some people like that in your surroundings. We don't want to be like that as speakers, specifically in an online format where there is a higher risk of people misperceiving us, right? So what should we do? How should be our spoken tone of voice? Any guesses? Feel free to write them down in the chat. It shouldn't be passive, it shouldn't be aggressive, and it shouldn't be passive aggressive. What should it be? It should be assertive. So when you are assertive in the way you speak, and when people perceive you as assertive, they're going to notice two key traits. Number one, a sense of confidence. And number two, a sense of serenity. You are cool as a cucumber. You are aware of what you're saying. You are backing up what you're saying with a sense of confidence and reliability. You are basically owning up to what you're saying, even if you're saying something that could constitute a grievance to the person in front of you. So when you are assertive, people will ultimately respect your word further down the line. Also, quality breathing helps in terms of vocal production and an overall public speaking delivery that is well received. And I'm going to share with you basically a formula for breathing that you can research. Some people with smartwatches or Fitbits and the like have already built in some features related to that technique. It's called the 4-7-8 breathing technique, also known as deep breathing or belly breathing. I'm writing those in the chat for you. The gist of it is to inhale 4 seconds from the nose, to hold your breath for 7 seconds, and to exhale through the mouth, through pursed lips. So you minimize the area of your lips as if you are blowing off a candle on a cake for 8 seconds. When you do this cycle a numerous amount of times, a minimum of 10, 4-7-8, 4-7-8, 4-7-8, that can help relax your body, and your body would be more in control to deliver a confident performance for your audience. Just please make sure to do that before the start of the meeting, not in front of your virtual audience. We have a good 5-7 minutes to go in order for me to wrap up my presentation, and then the last 10 minutes of the hour will be dedicated for your questions. Thank you for everyone staying with us so far. To wrap up, we're gonna talk about the actual content. So those 7%, as per Albert Mehrabian's formula, that are conceivably not that important when we look at the rest of the percentages, but they are really the essence of any public speaking activity. And here I'm going to start off with a question for you. In your opinion, again, short answers in the chat, why do people love stories? What is it about stories that have universal appeal? People enjoy them in book format, in movie format, in Netflix series format? What is it about stories that seems to be like a common denominator for people around the world, really, across cultures? Timmy is saying that we feel that we are a part of the story. That's a lovely way of uh, showcasing one aspect of the appeal of storytelling. You're right. Tom is saying that they are engaging by nature. Absolutely. Let's try to scratch a bit deeper. Why is it that they are engaging? What is it about stories that makes them engaging, really? Maha is saying that they are easier to remember. Yeah, there are specific things within a story that make them easy to remember, sure. We want to know the end, so there's this element of suspense. Uh, I love what Asim is saying. It's like a relaxing time. We just go away for a new world, a new universe through a story, something we can relate to. Yeah, beautiful. Everything that you've said is basically related to how we are wired as human beings. We are wired to share and receive stories. And it seems that in the business environment, we properly identify with three key types of stories. So in the future, as you're preparing your content and you want to infuse a bit of storytelling into your content, I would recommend using one of these three story types. The first one is the motivational story. So something that will pump up your audience, something that will give them a boost in morale, something that a lot of leaders do as part of annual retreats, start of year sharing of the strategy. A lot of them could be personal as well to showcase a sense of struggle and then one redeeming themselves or one really conquering their fears. A sense of motivation that can really be inspiring for audiences. The next type is lesson learned stories. So here, like the famous French author Jean de La Fontaine, you know, the fables where you have animals who are the heroes of the stories, and we have a lesson learned, a moral at the end of the story. We can still use that principle in the business setting, whereby by sharing the example or sharing the story of an incident we had with a customer, we are sharing basically a lesson learned for customer service to achieve better customer service experience, etc., etc. Also a very popular type of stories. The third type is what we call feel-good stories. So here, those are very popular in the world of Hollywood and Bollywood and TV and movie productions, whereby sometimes you just want to escape for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and live a different reality, a parallel reality where things are better. This is not to say that we want to uh, share falsehoods with our audience, but at the same time, if we infuse a bit of hope during a seemingly desperate situation, if we infuse a bit of optimism during a phase where things seem to be unsure or uncertain, our audiences would positively react to such stories. So try to refurbish your content or to add to your existing content an example of those three stories in order to make the entirety of your presentation or your speech more engaging for your audience. If you want to use any of those three stories or three story types, just please make sure that you have this one attribute in the formulation and the delivery of your content. Please make sure to be conversational. People do not like somebody who is throwing information at them, expecting that they will take them in. Using rhetorical questions, asking for feedback, making it feel that the story is larger than you as a speaker. The story is about the audience. It's about their journey. It's about their context. It's about challenges they are facing. When you are conversational, you would be much more memorable in the minds of your audience. Finally, very briefly in terms of the visuals that you're going to share, this is a great example from the design website Canva. Your audience is here to listen to you and not to read. So make sure that your visual material is light in terms of text. You are the star of the show and not your slides. Make sure that your slides offer a nice virtual background, but the gist of information preferably ought to come from you. Otherwise, what's the point of the meeting, right? Also, let your visuals speak. Make sure that they are aesthetic. Make sure that they are engaging visually in terms of colors, in terms of composition. choosing high resolution pictures. All of these are small details that really can make a difference between an all right presentation and a really memorable visual presentation. Also, I would recommend to maintain one main point per slide. Try to avoid the consultant approach to slides where it is very, very heavy on visual elements and everything is on one slide. This is great for you to read at your own pace, at your own leisure, if it's printed out in front of you. But if you want to create a visual presentation, a visual story, a visual slideshow, it's far more engaging to have 1 point per slide. And besides, nobody's going to count the number of your slides. You can go to 100, 200, 500, as long as everything is going along at a nice pace and people are not going to notice the time flying by. This is far more effective. Final point, you are in control of the show in terms of the transitions, in terms of moving from one point to the other. So this idea of the clicker in hand is to remind you that you are really the conductor of the visual presentation. You are the conductor of the show. In the end, and before I leave the floor for, open the floor for questions, a reminder of a couple of very important messages for you to take away. This is an image of the offline world where people used to be able to sit next to each other in large numbers. And you can see in the reaction on their faces, they are quite engaged. They are quite mesmerized by the speaker. Every single one of us can create such an impact, such a reaction in the audiences that you have in front of us. Public speaking is not a skill that is just for a select few lucky individuals. We can all grow into becoming engaging, memorable, and meaningful speakers and communicators. For that to happen, you need to make sure that you finish speaking before your audience finishes listening. So that's an important point. Making sure that you really work on crisp content that has interesting transitions, that gives a sneak preview of what to expect, creating a sense of anticipation for your audience. All of these things to really give them something to look forward to till the end. Also, when it comes to the storytelling, I love sharing this quote with as many people as possible. There isn't anyone you couldn't love once you've heard their story. So share your personal story, share aspects of storytelling within your content that makes your content far more palpable, tangible, and memorable. Lastly, whether offline or online, I really live by this mantra, is to really have fun. Learning happens better when you're having fun. Information is better conveyed when you're having fun. So not taking ourselves too seriously, depending on the topic and the audience, of course, can also help lighten up the mood and make the audience better receptive to what we're doing and what we're trying to share with them. That's it for me. I'm going to shortly open the floor for questions. In the meantime, I'm going to remind you that I recently launched a YouTube channel. If you'd like to subscribe and check out the already uploaded videos where I share communication and public speaking tips that hopefully you'll find useful. If you'd like to stay in touch personally as well, you can reach out via LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram. I've shared with you some screenshots so that you can recognize the right accounts once you've seen them. The handle is the same all across, Rabia Al-Khudr, my full name without spaces. So now I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. And a reminder that Astrolabs will be asking for your feedback for the session. So probably I should give the floor to Majid first before we open the floor for Q&A. He'll tell you a bit more about the feedback form for you to fill up. Majid?
Thank you, Rabih. I've just sent the form by chat on Zoom. If you're interested in viewing this video later, please fill out the form. Let us know what your opinion is and type in your email on the form as well. And we'll be sending you the video, the recording of this meetup to you by email. It's a very quick survey. It takes a minute or two. Please fill it out while the Q&A session is happening. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Majid. And now the floor is open to any questions or comments our 10 remaining participants have in relation to everything we talked about. So feel free to unmute yourselves or to write your question in the chat, and I'll be addressing them one after the other. So Tom is asking us a question about not speaking over people and not being spoken over. So a very common phenomenon when it comes to meetings in general in the offline sphere, and more so online. What would be very important is for somebody to play the role of a facilitator in the meeting in order really to orchestrate participation. So when we agree on rules early on in terms of everybody is muted, whoever wants to speak raises their virtual blue hand first, and the facilitator or the moderator gives them the floor for them to speak, that will make for a smooth meeting. And typically, one of the advantages of the online format is that those rules are usually better enforced compared to the offline world, because there is the lag time of the technology, whereby you need to unmute yourself and then speak and then remute yourself. So having clear session logistics and clear uh, house rules at the beginning of the meeting, in addition to appointing somebody who would really be facilitating the meeting, could help a lot in avoiding people speaking over, and giving each person the due rights they need to fully express themselves. I hope that answered your question. Thank you for sharing it, Tom. Anybody else? I have Rajan, who has unmuted themselves. Please go ahead.
Yeah, why world is not accepting that, people who are sincere, they really have a different, bad communicating language, or, body language. The guys who want to, really make a bad impact, or, I mean, you see that, right? Somebody who can cheat you, they can, they have a good tone and good voice. And somebody who is really sincere to deliver, yeah, he definitely has, some rash way of talking. So why are we not teaching people that, that if you really want good results, you need to accept both of them, rather than just going by, body language or voice.
That's a lovely question, Raja. And this touches upon a very important area of emotional intelligence, empathy. So these are things, when properly learned and effectively practiced, could help in the end result execution when it comes to public speaking. But definitely, those are areas that are very important. And I would encourage every single person here with us today to start acting as ambassadors towards boosting people's emotional intelligence and specifically boosting their empathy, because that would create much more meaningful conversations. And as a result, new information would be learned, and hopefully better relationships would be crafted amongst people. So thank you for that. Maha is asking, she's not asking, she's thanking us for the webinars. Thank you for joining. Do we have any other questions? Any other comments, whether in chat or via audio? Please feel free. So Nahas, I hope I'm mentioning that correctly. How to get anxiety out of our way while in a meeting. So anxiety is something that a lot of us live with. It's not something that you can totally eliminate, because our bodies are wired in a way to feel that stress response and feel anxious at times. Give the breathing exercise a try, the 4-7-8 deep breathing activity. When you're going to start incorporating that on a daily basis in your life, not necessarily just before a meeting, you're going to notice a complete transformation in the way you are dealing with anxiety. Professional tip, try to incorporate that deep breathing technique with something that you do routinely without thinking of. So for example, before going to bed or as you wake up, you automatically brush your teeth. You don't think about it. Associate brushing your teeth with the deep breathing, and that way, slowly but surely, you're going to notice you'll be doing 10 cycles of deep breathing in the morning and before going to bed, and there will be a lasting positive impact on you in terms of general anxiety management. Also, doing those 10 cycles of deep breathing right before a meeting can help a lot. We still have room for maybe one or two extra questions, I believe. So Victor, any small trick to fill the gap or awkward silence when your mind draws a blank? And it happens. Sometimes we feel like a deer stuck in headlights. We know what we want to say, but automatically we draw a blank. One easy way to get out of such an awkward situation is to solicit the help of the group. So by being vulnerable and being self-deprecating, a bit playful about it, and soliciting the help of the group, what was the second point I said? Something like that. People would normally not give too big of a deal for something like this, and they would gladly help you out. So that's one strategy. Another strategy is, if you don't want to go through the self-deprecating route and you want to pull yourself up from your own bootstraps, to simply repeat what you just last said at the end without giving any indication of anxiety or a sense of loss. Because sometimes what people do, unfortunately, is that they evidently show to us that they are lost. They are saying something and then, gosh, I forgot what I wanted to say. I wanted to say something. What was it? What was it? So all of that is not going to help you to maintain a professional image should you want to save yourself without relying on the audience. All right. So I guess with that, we will conclude our webinar for today. Thank you, Astrolabs, for hosting all of us. A reminder to stay in touch. Also check out Astrolabs' course offerings. They have lots of exciting things related to coding, to digital marketing, to B2B marketing, both in English and in Arabic. So hopefully this will be of interest to you as well. I wish you the best of luck in terms of your online meetings, online speaking, and you'll always find in me your communication coach if needs be in the future. Majid, I'm going to throw it to you to wrap things up.
Nothing else. Thank you very much for attending, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative. Enjoy your evening.